Hello everybody, welcome to this SUPboarder video. In this review video, I'm going to be looking and talking through the Quroc Crossover range of paddleboards, giving you the updates of these paddleboards this year, because there's an extra board and there's some new shapes in the crossover range for 2021. What is the Quroc Crossover range? Well, it is a range of paddleboards that's designed to very much get you into paddleboarding. You could do maybe a bit of light surfing with these boards. You could take them touring, fast paddling, wildlife paddling, take the family out on them. A lot of different disciplines you could do with these boards. And because they come in all different sizes as well, it does mean that you can get different size and ability of paddlers using them to do that. Now, Quroc are a UK-based paddleboard brand. They have been for a few years now. They have got a very good reputation in the UK, and they are predominantly solely selling to the UK as well. A lot of you are asking if they will send stuff abroad. I think they can send stuff abroad, but very much the shipping costs and everything are up to you wherever you are in the world. And the brand message behind Quroc is being very genuine, very true to the customers. They're trying to give you a very good product for the littlest amount of money, but also deliver you a product that has a good lifespan, longevity of the product, and the quality of the product overall shines through. In the past, they very much started off with one board, then the range has grown to several more, and now we're up to 4 boards in the range. You might have already seen, I've done a review of the Quroc Touring 13 foot by 31 board. This is, as I said, the crossover range. These are slightly more pushing towards all-round paddleboarding, from small surf to light touring. So the boards in the range this year, you've got a 10 foot 6 by 32, you've got 11 foot 4 by 32, and you've got a 12 foot by 33. Now, they have made some pretty big changes to most of their crossover range this year. One of the most obvious changes is to do with the smaller 10.6. Now, that's 10 foot 6 long, it's 32 inches wide. But they've dropped the thickness to that of 4.75 inches thick, opposed to their older 10.4, which used to be 6 inches thick. Now, you might have heard me rabbit on in other videos about different thicknesses will give you a different riding experience. And definitely, if you're a lighter paddler, going for a thinner baseboard with less thickness, less height off the water is going to be better for you when you're paddling. And that's why they have changed that 10 foot 6 board to a thinner baseboard. And they've kept the other two, the 11.4 and the 12 foot, at 6 inches thick. A 6 inch thick board is obviously going to give you more stiffness. Really is great for the heavier weight people. Maybe you want 2 people on the board, maybe you want to carry more cargo on your board. 6 inches will allow you to carry and transport so much more weight on top of your board. If you're not looking at doing that, or you're a lighter paddler, definitely sub 80, 75 kilograms, looking at a thinner board is going to be a better experience for you when you're paddling, and you're not going to need that extra thickness that the other boards would offer you. But you might want the extra length and glide, because remember, the longer the paddleboard is, the more glide or the faster it's going to travel across the water. And a shorter paddleboard will be more compact and easier to turn around, easier to transport because it's not so long, but it will be slower to paddle, have less glide when you're paddling across the water. Also, talking about the board widths, if you go wider with a paddleboard, you're going to get more stability, but it's going to slow you down. So it's always a compromise, remember, between the amount of stability you need to feel confident to paddle the board in the sort of location and the ability you are, and not going too wide so it will slow you down and it will suffer when it comes to the glide that it gives to the board. The 11 foot 4 board is probably the board that they have changed the least, as in the overall shape is the same. Still the same width at 32 wide, and it's still 6 inches thick. Good size board, up a size from the 10.6. It's going to offer you that bit more glide because it's longer. You've still got the same width as the 10.6, so really it should offer you the same amount of stability, but it is slightly thicker, being 6 inches, so it will take a lot more weight on top of the board if that's just a person, or maybe 2 people or more cargo, however you see that weight going on your board. Quroc have done quite a clever move with their new board, 12 foot, because they've made that a little bit wider again, so it's 33 inches wide. So you're seeing it's a longer board, but it's got a little bit more width to it. Now, generally 33 inches wide is obviously going to be slower to paddle than a 32 inches wide board. You're going to have more drag in the width, but because this board is a little bit longer, it probably will equal out, and it will have a fairly good amount of glide to it combined with its length. So the 12 foot board is going to be great for those heavier paddlers or bigger paddlers, or maybe, as I said, 2 people paddling, more cargo again than the smaller 11 foot, and obviously can take way more weight than the smallest 10.6. So you can see that Quroc have really thought about their range of crossovers this year. They've increased their range of boards. It was 2 boards last year, now it's 3, but they really have put the boards in place and changed the sizes of the current boards to really make them fit a really good range of paddlers. Now I'm going to talk about our recommended weights for these boards in a moment. I want to speak about the deflection tests first, because this is a pretty big thing that we highlighted in the Quroc touring video that we did. The construction of these boards is fantastic. They're all using their cross-woven monocoque fusion drop stitch. There's a lot of materials in this board. They've got a lot of good quality materials in this board. What we mean by cross-woven is the internal drop stitch core, which is nylon strands from top to bottom. They're not just going straight up and straight down, they're crossing over each other, which gives you a much more stable sort of structure when the board is fully inflated. The woven technology is how the strands are sort of looped up. A lot of brands, to be fair, are using woven technology now. It absorbs less weight, it's a lighter product, it's a much stiffer product, and it really is the way that all good top-end paddleboards brands like these are using woven technology. They also use multiple layers of PVC in the top and bottom, 2 layers on the top and bottom, and it's 2 layers on the rails, so you're getting a very hard wearing board. But it doesn't mean the boards are heavy. They've managed to keep the weights down on the boards this year, and I think they even quote that they're 20% lighter than last year's boards. The weights, when we weighed them, the 10.6 weighs 8.77 kilos, the 11.4 weighs 9.19 kilos, 12 foot when we weighed it weighs 10.26 kilos. Now just remember, with all paddleboards, you can get really lightweight paddleboards. Like, you can find the cheaper base paddleboards maybe at 8 kilos, 7 kilos, but it really comes down to sort of quality materials and what sort of thickness of materials they put on their board. Like, you can buy a cheap, maybe $300 ice up on Amazon, and it maybe is really, really light, but I can guarantee if it's really light, really cheap, the materials are either not going to be on the board in the first place, which is why it's quite light, or they're not going to be very good quality materials, and it is going to really bend when you're standing on the board. And that's what these boards are not. They are very good quality materials, and that really shines out in the deflection test. That's the easiest way to tell if your board is well made and made of good quality materials. So these 6-inch thick boards, which are all the same construction, and we also reviewed again the touring board. That was a 6-inch thick board. We pumped that up to 18 psi, has a recommended pressure of 18 to 20 psi, so you can get a large amount of pressure in these boards. And I know when they test these in the factory, they even pump them up to 29 psi, and they leave them for, I think, 60 hours plus to see if they lose any air, just as one of their tests. So it shows how much pressure you can get in these boards. So when these boards were pumped up to 18 psi, they dropped 10 millimeters, which is the same as the touring board that we tested a few months ago. So the 6-inch Qurocs made with the same construction, they dropped 10 millimeters at 18 psi. The really interesting thing is looking at these thinner 4.75-inch thick boards. So you're dropping the thickness, it's going to be more bendy. It's going to be. Having a thicker board is stiffer. That's the reason a lot of cheaper base brands have only 6-inch thick boards in their range, because you can have a much stiffer board for the price, for the materials you put into it. So just remember that. So the 4.75-inch thick board, it's going to be more bendy than the 6-inch thick board, and it dropped 14 millimeters. But that isn't actually very much of a drop considering it's a thinner base board. I reckon if you went up to 20 psi, maybe even crept over 21, 22 psi, the deflection is going to drop down quite a bit, and you could probably even get this down to 13, 12 millimeters in deflection. All 3 of them really perform well in the deflection, and even the thinner 4.75-inch thick board has a much stiffer deflection than many other 6-inch thick boards on the market. So you can see there, just by the data that we've given you, that Quroc are definitely focusing on the quality that goes in and on their paddleboards to make durable, stiff, and fairly lightweight. But now let's look at the other stuff that we all notice and very much use when we go paddleboarding. First off, the backpack. Quroc have always had a very simple looking bag. It's not a really fantastically stylish looking product, but it does do a really good job. It's nice and big, it's nice and comfortable, it's got wheels. You are going to be able to carry your board fairly long distances, and you're also going to be able to get other paddling equipment and other stuff inside that bag as well. So if you're going on holiday, going on a plane, do I dare say, in the future, you are going to be taking that bag just as that sole bag. You can probably get your shorts, you get your clothes. Yes, you'll be packing light, of course, but you get a lot of stuff in that bag alone. Another bag that you get in the Quroc packages, you get a mini dry bag. So instead of putting your repair kit in like a plastic tube, which you get with most of the other inflatable paddleboards in the market, it's like a plastic tube that you never really can use for anything by leaving your repair kit in, which you're probably never going to use anyway. They supply a little mini dry bag, which is great. So you can put your car keys, you can put your phone in it, you can take your first aid kit in it, and you also do get your valve keys and all the standard stuff you get with all other iSUP packages. So that can easily be done up nice and tight, nice and airtight. No water's going to get in there, and then you can clip it on the bungees at the front of the board. A really important item that you can't live without is the pump. So Quroc have moved on to GRI HP8 pumps this year. A few years ago they had the triple action pumps, the double chamber pumps. They were much bigger, they were much heavier, they got a lot of air in the board, but these are the newer pumps from GRI. We've tested these in the past. They are really good pumps. Lots of brands have got them. They are definitely the best pump when it comes to handle and foot grips. Very comfortable on the hands, which means you can get a lot of pressure in the board. They're a two-way pump, so they pump on the upstroke and on the downstroke. And then when you get enough air in your board and the pumping starts to get hard on the upstroke, you can just turn the valve over at the back. Very easy to do this one as well. And then it will just pump on the downstroke, which means you can finish your board off. The pump goes right up to about 26, 27 PSI, so there's no problem getting the 18 to 20 PSI in these boards. It is going to be a little bit longer to inflate than the bigger double chamber pumps, but for the weight, this is one of the best traveling touring pumps, and we do take this pump ourselves on a lot of SUP touring adventures because it's a fairly lightweight pump and it's pretty durable. Inflation time, it takes about 5 to 6 minutes to get the air in these boards to get paddling. Obviously the smaller 10.6 is going to be a little bit quicker because it's not so long, it's not so thick, and the bigger 12 foot is the biggest and thickest and widest board. It's going to take a little bit longer. One thing that gets very much overlooked from the brand side, I think, is the paddles that come with the packages. Most brands will supply you with an aluminium or maybe a glass fiber, or if you're really lucky, a carbon nylon, which is where you have a carbon shaft and a nylon blade. But Quroc have definitely thought a little bit more about the paddle than the average paddleboard brand. For a start, you get a paddle bag, and the paddle itself is definitely way more special. This is a Pura Vida 3K full carbon paddle 3-piece. So, you get your first section, all nicely in its own little paddle bag, so you don't damage it. You get a top section with a carbon handle, and you've got your middle section, obviously full carbon as well. They've given you a medium stiffness as well. They thought about the stiffness of the paddle shaft as well. Just in case, if you're not aware, stiffnesses, you can get different stiffnesses of the shafts themselves. If you're a really heavy, powerful person, maybe with bigger shoulders, you could be looking at stiffer paddles. If you are a lighter paddler that has got smaller, more petite shoulders, you're going to be looking at a not so stiff paddle because you don't want to load up your shoulders very much. So they've gone for a medium stiffness, which is a nice for all-round paddling, light touring, maybe a bit of light racing, bit of surfing. You could do everything with this base paddle. The blade itself is a very nice blade shape. It's very thin on the entry, therefore when you put your paddle in the water, it's very efficient. It's not a too big a size of blade. It's 580 square centimeters of blade size, which many other brands will label up as a medium size. And that just basically means that when you're paddling longer distances, you're not going to load your shoulders up again. Like I just said about the shaft, the paddle blade also makes a difference. If you're paddling with a really big spade of a paddle, you're going to basically go quite quickly, but you're going to load your shoulders up quite soon, and you're going to, fatigue's going to set in, and you're not actually going to be able to paddle so far. So going for a medium blade is going to be great for most weight paddlers, and definitely even a lower ability paddler, you are going to notice paddling with a nice lightweight paddle, because these paddles weigh 680 grams. So this is a lightweight carbon 3-piece paddle. And I tell you, if you get yourself on an aluminium 3-piece paddle or a glass fiber 3-piece paddle, or we go on your friend's package, there's a big difference between this and those base paddles, I can guarantee it. So this is a hot paddle that's going to last you quite a few years. They fit together really nicely with a push pin system in the middle here. But the best thing is the top section has got a flat edge here. So when it fits in here, it locates in the top edge and it can't twist. They lock in and they are secure even before you even put the latch lever lock down. So push that down and it becomes really, really secure. So I can't say more. The Pura Vida 3K carbon paddles are absolutely fantastic, and they really are good value to come with a package like this. Before you get in the water, you're definitely going to have to install your leash. All of the crossovers come with a standard coiled, pretty thick, heavy duty Quroc leash, all branded up nice and Quroc. We've used these leashes in the past from Quroc. They've lasted well. In fact, we've still got some in our leash cupboard now that we pull out to use quite often on our technique videos. So these leashes are good quality. Got to make sure you use your leash unless you're in moving water or strong tidal areas. But look out for some other videos if you want to find out more information on that. So there's a nice quality leash there. And the only other thing you're going to have to install before you get on the water is you are going to have to install your 9-inch US box touring base fin. All of these boards come with the same central fin, but the smaller 10.6 has got 2 mini side fins. And the reason that 10.6 has got the smaller side fins as well is because Quroc is saying that you could take this board surfing, and having the side fins will give you a little bit more grip in the wave face. And definitely just a point to note on that, the thinner baseboard will offer you much better performance in the waves than a thicker 6-inch thick board, just if you're unaware of that. The other boards don't need the little mini side fins. They will slow the board down a little bit, and the other boards are definitely set up for more longer distances and paddling a little bit faster. Other fittings on this board, well, definitely Quroc have put a lot more thought into the deck fittings. Bigger bungees up at the front there. You've got extra neoprene sort of carry handles either side of the bungees, front and back. The neoprene wrapping here is also a water bottle holder. You can then take them off and put them on the back, or change them around or put them in the middle. You've got a ram mount up at the nose there. You've got extra handles up at the nose. You've got handles at the back. This is the stuff that we've always been saying for years. You need handles, especially if you're going to be putting cargo, or just maybe if you're struggling to carry the board down your own, you can have help. Get somebody to carry the front and the back of the board. Makes it way easier to transport your board. You've still got your really nice neoprene wrapped central carry handle. This board's comfortable if you want to carry it fairly long distances inflated. It's nicely in the middle of the board. All just standard stuff that you'd expect, but it obviously is well finished off with these boards. Like you do with all the Quroc boards, you get a large diamond grip EVA deck pad which goes right towards the back of the tail, and it's nicely cut in around the bungee points and the stainless D-rings. All the bungees are quick release, so you can actually take them off at the front and the back, opposed to a lot of other brands who basically tie them and then maybe do shrink wrap over them. Let's say the kids are going to borrow the board, there's 2 or 3 of them on there, they're going to be running around. Get rid of the bungees, they haven't got to trip over it and maybe get entangled in it. It's much safer to take that off. Easy to do that, but it's nice Quroc put that on these boards this year. And definitely another thing that we've always said in other videos, if you're going to put bungees on your boards, put big bungees on your boards. Put bungees that go right out to the edge of the boards, and that's exactly what Quroc have done on the front and the back of the board. So good to see it. Even at the back of the board, they've used the full width of the board. The bungees go right to the outside. And then, yeah, if you don't want them, you can just take them off and remove them, and you don't have to put them on at all. But it's really good. They've thought about everything. When it comes to paddling these boards in the water, as we said, first off, the stiffness. All these boards are really, really stiff, definitely for their thicknesses. If you look at the overall outlines of these boards, you'll see they're all fairly similar. They've got a fairly square, wide tail. The square, wide tail is great if you want to move around the board, maybe walk towards the back of the board. You're going to get a lot more stability at the tail there because you've got more width, opposed to a thinner, narrower tail, which may be quicker to paddle, but you are going to struggle for stability when you're standing at the back of the boards. But the general outline shape of these boards is very similar. They're aiming at the same sort of feel and stability throughout the boards, but obviously the longer 12 foot is going to be faster, and the smaller 10.6 is going to be much more maneuverable and easier to turn around. And the 11.4 sits in the middle of the range, doing a bit of both of the bigger board and the slightly smaller board. If we now move on to what board and ability and weight range should be looking at each board, well, like with all paddle boards, you've always got to answer yourself a few questions to understand which board is best for you. First off, your weight. Your weight does make a massive difference to what paddle board you choose. If you're a heavier person, and also if you're a much taller person as well, you are going to be looking towards a wider base board. Yes, the length will make a difference as well. You will get a little bit more gain of stability in the length, but mostly it's the width. A wider board is going to be much, much more stable. So the 12 foot by 33 there, it's a biggest board in the Quroc Crossover range, and you're going to be able to take people up to about 140 kilos, 130 kilos, I'm going to say, are going to go on this board quite comfortably. Remember, it's stiff, it's got that width to it. Real sweet spot weight, maybe if you're a first timer getting on this board, probably 95 to 110 kilos will be a really good size. Obviously, get on it if you're smaller, it's going to be fine, but still, if you're a larger person, that's going to be okay at that weight. Maybe if you're 130, 140 kilos as a first time paddler, try and get yourself on a wider baseboard, 34, 35, 36 inches wide, maybe even just for your first few sessions, and then you can move down to a smaller board like this 12 foot. Moving down to the 11.4, it's obviously not going to take as much weight as the bigger 12 foot. It's not as wide, so it's 32 inches wide. Probably maximum rider weight, probably about 120 kilos. Definitely sweet spot if you're a beginner, first time paddleboarder. You could get on this from 75, 80 kilos up to 90, 95 kilos quite comfortably, and it's going to do all types of paddling. A little bit more faster paddling compared to the 10.6. The 10.6, smallest board in the range, remember it's thinner, not as thick. It's not going to take as much weight, even though it's quite stiff, and Quroc do recommend that you could paddle up to 110 kilograms, which I think you could, but I think the sweet spot for that board would be, you could be sub 75 kilos, but I think it's going to be 70 to 85 kilos will be a really comfortable sweet spot for the 10.6 board. And obviously it's going to be much more maneuverable. So if you just want to go out paddling around in circles and just play around off the beach and maybe get into step back turns and get into just playing around on the paddleboard, I think a lot of you will really enjoy coming into paddleboarding and start off paddleboarding on the Quroc Crossover range, but also that will help you progress and go a long way with your paddling. If you're already thinking you're going to be paddling a little bit further and you want to do a bit more adventuring, I would steer away from the 10.6 and look towards the 11.4 or the 12 foot, unless you're particularly a lighter paddler that doesn't need the extra thickness in the 6-inch thick boards. Just quickly before we move on to warranty, environmental credentials about Quroc, talk about deflating these boards. It's really quick to deflate these boards because there's a valve at the back. You undo the valve, press the button down, all the air comes out in one go, and you just roll it up from the nose straight towards the tail. Yes, you've got a hard fix fin box, which you might have to fold or roll your board so you come to the section of the fin box at the right time, but as soon as you've done it once or twice, it's not a problem rolling it up, and getting it in the bag is super easy because the bag is nice and big. So not a problem there, packing it up. So let's move on to pros and cons and value for money. And first off, talking a bit more about Quroc, their environmental credentials and the warranties of these boards. So the warranties, that's a really big thing I want to speak about. So standard, you get a 3-year warranty with all these boards, but you get a lifetime care package with all of their paddleboards. So that means after years and years of use, if there is something wrong with the paddleboards, they can try and fix them, or if they cannot fix them, they can offer you a £100 buyback where they buy even a destroyed paddleboard back off of you, a Quroc paddleboard, and give you credit to buy a new paddleboard. Definitely, if we bring in the environment there, Quroc are really focusing and pushing a lot on the environmental side of the products. The packaging that comes in the boards is really good. They're wrapped in paper. There is still a little bit of plastic, but honestly, I'm really impressed with the amount of sort of drive and force a smaller UK-based paddleboard brand compared to the worldwide paddleboard brands is pushing towards the environmental nature of what they're trying to do. They're also giving 1% back to the planet scheme. They're also supporting Surfers Against Sewage. They're also trying to resource all of their materials as local as possible, so there's less transport stuff going at the factory end. They are really focusing at a lot of things, and I think it genuinely is something they're really constantly thinking about. It's not just a bit of marketing spin. Another thing that Quroc are really focusing on is the longevity of their boards. They want to make sure their boards last as long as possible. I know that the glues they're putting in the boards are 10 years plus, so you're going to really should expect way more than 10 years out of these boards. Okay, looking at pros and cons and value for money. Well, pros, the package is fantastic. You get a lot of good stuff in your package. The paddle is definitely the best paddle we've seen on any paddleboard package to date. Good range of shapes and sizes. Bringing in the 10.6 there at 4.75 inches thick is a really good move for the slightly lighter paddlers. They're going to have much better paddling experience. And also bringing in the 12 foot, having it slightly wider at 6 inches thick as well is great for the heavier paddlers or people maybe want to take that much more weight. Definitely the quality of the whole package, and as I just said, the environmental credentials behind Quroc is definitely something that needs to be mentioned, and it's a real pro for this brand. And looking at the cons, well, unfortunately Quroc is still only available as a direct sale brand. That does mean the cost comes down, but it means you're not going to be able to use or try before you buy in so many places. They're not going to be available in lots of shops all around the world, so you are going to have to go through just the Quroc website. The graphics I always think are a little bit boring, a little bit dull, and they haven't changed year after year, but Quroc actually say that actually helps the longevity of the boards, which means that people don't want to have to upgrade their board because the graphics have changed. And very much if you've got a Quroc in the first year, you've got one very similar in the 5th or 6th year, which I do understand as a longevity and the environmental side of the board as well. And I've got to say it about the kick pad. I say it in every single review. Any board that hasn't got a kick pad, I think they need one. A kick pad is basically a raised EVA pad that goes at the back of your EVA deck pad. It just helps you feel where your foot is, especially when you're getting into step back turns and maneuvers around the back of the board. It's a simple thing, but it does make a difference to feeling where your foot is in the right place. I know Quroc say that most of you out there are not using the kick pads, but I'd like to encourage you to be getting out there and using the kick pad and using your board, because you will become a much better and a more confident paddleboarder if you push your limits a little bit more. And having a kick pad on the back there would help that a little bit. Well, value for money, £699 for the 10.6 and £729 for the two bigger boards is a very competitive price point. You're up there, aren't you, a little bit? They're not the cheapest paddleboards in the market for sure, but definitely you are getting a quality product. It is absolutely worth the money, and it's the sort of thing I would say if you've got the money and you're willing to go to that price point, or you can go to that price point, you're going to be backing a brand that's not only giving back to you but also giving back to the environment, which I think is becoming a more and more of an important thing, especially with these large plastic boards which are going to last forever. So there we go. I hope you found that review interesting and informative. Quroc have definitely put a lot of work into their new crossover range. Big improvements with the 10.6, dropping that thickness. That's a really good move. And the bigger 12 foot is going to offer a great board. A lot of more heavyweight paddlers or paddlers wanting to carry more weight in general. The feedback we've heard from you so far of the other reviews, you're all really happy. As customers, as Quroc, please keep your feedback coming. Any questions and comments about this board or other boards we've tested, please always let us know. Please like, comment and subscribe, and give this video a dislike if you found it complete rubbish, but please write a comment of how we can improve it for the future. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on another SUPboarder video real soon.